Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 31 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
It took Zarin a few seconds to collect himself after his soul box's destruction. But when he had, his anger burned hotter than ever. He summoned his power and sent a call to every adult male beast man in the mountains. He couldn't send a complex message to so many, so he kept it simple. Gather! Wherever they were, whatever they were doing, beastmen rushed to follow his orders. Every village had a mustering point he had marked when he first arrived to gather his forces centuries ago. He sent his power out to those places and opened portals, dozens of them, each exiting a short ways from the border of Celestia. For 3 days he did nothing but open portals and direct his beastmen through them. He'd surrounded Celestia with an army unlike anything the Lake Kingdoms had seen in millennia. Let the weaklings see his power and tremble. And while they trembled, Zarin would attend to his real mission. When Zarin at last finished transporting his army, he sent mental commands to the Saberfangs to surround the border and kill anything that tried to cross it. That done, he focused his will on the Black Prince and opened a portal. Zarin emerged in the still smoking ruins of Rel. A few feet away, his servant was overseeing a line of ragged humans tied together and being led away by a handful of wolfmen. I felt your summons, Master. Do we finally move against Celestia? The army will, in a manner of speaking. We have a more pressing task. While all eyes are on the beastmen, we'll do a bit of quiet killing. Zarin felt the Black Prince's excitement, and he shared it. The final moves were underway. Succeed or fail, his long quest ended soon. Where? The Palace of Catalandan to start. I trust you remember your courtly manners. The Black Prince drew his sword. I've learned some new manners since my last visit to court. Zarin waved his hand and a portal opened. His eager comrade stepped through and Zarin followed several steps behind. He emerged in time to see his servant slice a guard in plate armor clean in half. The gate had opened exactly where he wanted it, the throne room of the Catalandan Palace. Given the time of day, the court would be in full swing. Courtiers ran screaming in every direction. The king reached for his sword, but Zarin blasted him to a smoking pile of ash before he drew it. He couldn't possess a human with celestial blood, but they burned just the same as a normal human. The Black Prince hacked down a pair of guards and advanced toward the queen. Zarin could have killed her faster, but he found it helped keep the peace between them if he let his servant enjoy his share of the killing. He left the prince to his work and stretched out his senses, searching for the royal brats. They had 2 under 10 years old, if Zarin remembered correctly. A guard shouted and swung his halberd at him. Zarin disintegrated the weapon and the man wielding it with a contemptuous wave of his hand. He found the children above them and to the right, moving toward the wall of the palace. Someone, probably their personal guards, must have heard the screams and acted. He had no intention of letting anyone escape him this time. Zarin blew a hole in the ceiling and flew up through it. He found himself in a bedchamber, decorated with carved wooden furniture, all of it delicate works of art. It had to be the parents' room. The children drew further away every moment. Zarin turned right and blew a hole through the wall. Something clanked behind him, and when he turned, he found the Black Prince had leapt through the hole. Zarin left through the hole and entered a hall. 2 paces away, another wall blocked his way. He blew that one away and continued on. 4 holes later, he reached a staircase leading down. He descended. The children were close, not more than a few yards away. At the bottom, he found a wooden door. The door delayed him no more than the walls above. He stepped over the splintered remains and entered a simple stone room without windows and only the single exit. 1 more door blocked him. All his arcane senses screamed that his prey waited beyond it. He took another step, and something stabbed him in the back. He'd focused on the children to such an extent he didn't notice the man hiding in the shadows above him. Not that it mattered. No mere weapon of steel could hurt his already dead flesh. He sent a burst of dark power back along the dagger blade and blasted his would-be assassin to bloody gobbets. The Black Prince stepped in beside him. "May I, master?" He asked so politely Zarin didn't have the heart to say no, though when his servant had finished, the children might have wished he had. Generals, lightcasters, and royals filled the war room. Cole, as a newly minted knight, felt out of place, though he probably had more actual combat experience against beastmen than anyone else in the room. Dozens of little figures on the central map represented the positions of beastmen units surrounding Celestia. He had no idea that many beastmen existed in the whole world. "They've got us surrounded on 3 sides. Some general Cole hadn't met before today, a fat man in his 60s with a droopy white mustache, adjusted a pewter saber fang. Our scouts estimate their numbers at over 50,000. A murmur ran through the assembled group. Rain gripped his arm and Cole forced himself not to sigh. Since she knighted him a few days ago, she'd gotten awful clingy. "And they've made no move to cross the border?" King Jared asked. "None, Majesty. They're setting up camps, digging in for a siege and hunting down everything in the area, animal or human." "Where are Zarin and the Black Knight?" Cole muttered. None of the rangers had reported seeing any sign of the monster's leaders. Excellent question. Talia must have overheard him. When she spoke, Rain's grip tightened on his arm. Cole frowned, but didn't comment. They've got to be there somewhere. I've sensed so many dark portals opening in the past few days they couldn't have gone anywhere. Cole flinched when his new sword vibrated. At the same moment, the king looked down at his sword. "What is it?" Talia asked. Cole shook his head. He had no idea. The sword had done nothing like that before. "They broke another sword," King Jared answered for him. "Which one?" "There's no way to know," the king said. "I guess that answers the question of where Zarin and the Black Prince went." Cole's eyes widened as he understood. The beastmen are a distraction. While we're focused on his army, Zarin thinks he can sneak around and take out the other royal families. Then he can attack Celestia without any of the other kingdoms being in a position to help. Talia crossed her arms. With the other royals dead, the kingdoms will be leaderless and scrambling over succession. It's clever, less destructive than obliterating the country, but clever. Do you have embassies in the other countries? Rain asked. We need to find out who got attacked. Talia smiled. Clever girl. We have embassies in all but the fallen kingdoms. Talia turned her attention to a young woman in Lightcaster robes. Send messages to all the ambassadors and find out where he struck. The Lightcaster bowed and hurried out of the room. That'll take a while, Cole said. What do we do in the meantime? The general that had been leading the meeting cleared his throat. Even if they are a distraction, we still need to deal with the beastmen on our doorstep. Our soldiers are skilled, but the monsters outnumber us more than 2 to 1. As long as they're content to sit and do nothing, they're not our priority. We need to warn the surviving royals about Zarin. Talia turned to Cole. Are you ready to go out again? If it meant another shot at the Black Knight, Cole was ready and willing. What did you want me to do? I want you to take a small team, warn the survivors, and, if they're willing, bring back as many of them as will come. Cole nodded. Sounded simple enough. I'll take Alana, Maines, and his rangers. We've worked together once, so that'll make it easier. Fine. They're still in the Western Hills. I'll send Alana a message. By the time they get here, we should have gotten a response from our ambassadors. Cole watched as Alana opened a golden portal, then followed Maines through. They'd heard from the ambassadors a few minutes earlier. Zarin attacked Catalandan. In retrospect, it shouldn't have come as a surprise. Catalandan bordered Celestia to the north, so it made sense to throw them into chaos so they'd be less able to send assistance. Cole exited the portal and found the gray stone walls of Bane Castle looming a few yards away. The castle, much like Castle Finegold, sat on a hill overlooking the city of Baneland. The main gate waited a short distance away, and when Alana emerged and closed the portal, the little group headed toward it. 2 guards in mail and carrying halberds stood outside the closed gates. They wore the black and crimson tabards of the Royal Guard of Baneland. "Excuse me," Cole said as he approached the guards. "I have an urgent message for the king and queen." "Who the bloody hell are you?" the nearest guard asked. "My name is Cole, and I'm a knight of Corinthia. I bear the royal sword of Corinthia as proof of my good intentions and the importance of my message. If you have a lightcaster on duty, they can verify its authenticity." The guard looked at his sword, and his eyes widened. "Looks just like His Majesty's." He turned to the second guard. "Go fetch Master Jonas. He'll know what to do." The second guard rapped twice, then once on the bars of the portcullis, and a moment later it clanked up enough for him to duck underneath. "He'll be a minute," the guard said. "How about you tell me what the hell's going on?" Cole finished telling the guard about the Beastman siege when a gray-bearded man in a lightcaster robe arrived at the gate. Before the portcullis rose, his gaze locked on Cole's sword. He and the second guard ducked under the portcullis and approached him. Alana stepped forward and raised her right hand, palm out. "Light shine on you, brother." Jonas mirrored the gesture. "Light shine on you, sister." He looked away from Alana and turned his attention to Cole. "So it's true. You bear one of the royal swords. How did you come to carry it?" "The Princess of Corinthia chose me as her champion. If you can arrange it, we really need to speak with the royal family." "Of course." Jonas gestured to the guard and the portcullis clanked up again. Whoever had to work the windlass would be sore at this rate. "You can tell me what's happening as we walk." "You know about Zarin?" Cole asked. "The Darkcaster?" "Yes, all Lightcasters know of him. He's a plague on this world." "Yeah, that's him. Well, a little while ago, he and his knight attacked and killed the royal family of Catalandan. His Beastmen army has Celestia surrounded, and we fear he'll move against the other royals." Jonas looked at him with wide eyes. "When you said you had an important message, you aren't exaggerating. I'll make certain the king and queen agree to see you." An hour later found them in the Bane Castle throne room. The lingering scent of perfume indicated they'd cleared the hall recently. The only people remaining were the king and queen seated on their thrones, 10 guards in tabards and mail identical to the gate guards, and Jonas and a second female lightcaster, a middle-aged brunette with a motherly look about her. Cole's team stopped a few feet from the dais where the thrones sat. The king, a rugged older man of perhaps 60, leaned forward. "Well, Master Jonas thinks your message important enough to let strangers into my castle and clear the midday court to limit the number of ears that hear. So let's have it." Cole told him everything that had happened up to their arrival. The queen gasped when he got to the part about Catalandan's royal family getting wiped out. When he finished catching them up, Cole said, "King Jared and Queen Talia have extended an offer of sanctuary to any or all members of your family that wish to accept it. It appears Master Jonas has once more proven a shrewd judge of importance." The king scratched at an old scar on his cheek. "And Jared thinks I need protecting. We may not have the protective wards of Celestia, but Baneland is strong enough to protect itself without outside help." Cole smiled before he could catch himself. "Something amusing, boy." Cole noted the edge in the king's voice but ignored it. "What you said reminds me of something Princess Rain said when we were fleeing the beastmen sent to kill us. She told me her father always claimed Corinthia was the strongest of the Lake Kingdoms. We were strong, Majesty, but it made no difference. The Darkcaster blasted down our walls and his monsters overwhelmed our soldiers. I see the look in your eyes. You think Baneland is different. Stronger. You might be right. I certainly don't know enough about your kingdom to judge. I only ask that you consider what would happen if you're wrong. I know how important these swords are. More important than my life, or yours, or any individual's." The queen reached over and took her husband's hand. "Perhaps we might send Adam just until the current crisis is settled." The king glared at Cole, a deep frown creasing his face. "You believe he will attack us?" Cole nodded. "Given what happened in Catalandan, I can't imagine any other possibility." The king turned to the second lightcaster. "Fetch my son. Tell him he's going to have an adventure." Before the lightcaster could get out of the throne room, she stopped and looked back. Alana stiffened beside Cole. "What is it?" Power crackled, and a black disk appeared in the center of the throne room. A familiar, black-armored form stepped through, followed a moment later by a smaller man in black robes. Cole had his sword out in an instant. This was his chance to kill the man that murdered his mentor.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.